Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff Reinholtz. I'm back again with MSP Insights. Today, I'm so unbelievably honored to be joined by Brian Weiss with Itech Solutions. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Brian, I want to carve out a little bit of time with you today and really start to dig into your story. You know, as you and I have had an opportunity to get together, 3 or 4 times, talk about you leveraging data tools and technologies, and then spending a little bit of time really learning about what has built your company today. I really became fascinated about learning about your story. Someone that's in college, spending a little bit of time, starting to work with some folks that are basically needing some kind of break fix things with their computers, right? Some of the things that I think a lot of folks, when you're in tech, you overlook it, but a lot of people need it. To where you've gone with the business, I think about who you're supporting today with a co-managed strategy, supporting so many organizations and businesses, not only in what you're doing within your business, but I think about what you're doing from a philanthropic perspective and your focus on giving back into your community as well. I'm really would love to learn more about your story. So what do you think was that aha moment, if you hit the rewind, Brian, to where you were fixing some computers that were broken to someone now who's running a highly successful business and having such a big impact in your community?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with the personality, right? I mean, you got to have that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. And mine was, I had a knack and a need to like troubleshoot and fix things, right? And I always kind of grew up into electronics, but video games is really what got me into computers. And we're having LAN parties and we can't network on an IPX network, and we got to figure out why it's not talking, the computers. And we're dealing with hubs back then with collisions that you had to troubleshoot. And so it really started with networking for gaming parties. And then I was lucky enough in my high school that they had a computer services track. We were all Macs back then, but I was literally learning how to fix and repair and set up computers in high school. By my senior year, I had my 2 required periods to graduate, and then my other 5 periods were basically traveling around the school district fixing computers. So it was kind of a cool senior year. But right out of high school, obviously I went to college for computer services because that's what everyone was doing back then, and I guess even now. But I found that I was learning a lot more out in the field. I also was working for a little break fix shop, computer stuff is what it was called. And it was a little mom and pop break fix shop. And I was learning a lot more working there than I was in college. So I ended up dropping out of college, which made my mother cry. Unfortunately, I still remember the phone call. And decided to work in computers full time. I learned early on just through some books I read in college, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's this idea of financial freedom. So I wanted to have that. And I worked at the mom and pop shop for about 3 years and helped them grow from 1 to 3 stores. And I felt like I kind of outgrew it because I saw a clear division between servicing residential versus business. And I saw the 2 value propositions there, right? A business needs their computers to make money versus residential, it tends to be more hobby or personal things. And so I wanted to improve the delivery of our services at this company, and I saw us hamstringed in several areas that I just wasn't going to be able to outgrow. So I went off on my own, realizing that I was kind of limited in my capabilities working for someone else. And so I was on my own for about 3 years. I left the break fix shop, did a real nice letter to the clients, a lot of them that depended on me, told them, hey, technically you're a client of computer stuff. I don't want to take their business. Please give them a chance, before you just leave and decide you want to continue using me type thing. I tried to make it as amicable as possible, because it was an emotional time kind of leaving a company after that long. And luckily I had a handful of clients that decided to stick with me. So I was kind of an independent contractor for a while. until I grew enough clients where I needed employees. And a lot of these clients also needed websites. And I had this vision of everything being SaaS in the future. This is back in like '05, right? And so I partnered up with someone I met at Computer Stuff that worked for me, who is now in web development. We started Itech in '05, and we did web development and IT. We focused for the first like 3 years strictly on web development, building that brand up, getting that clientele. And it wasn't until about '08 when the crash happened, and most of our web development clients were in the marketing industry and jewelry industry, that I realized that was my first kind of hard lesson being a business owner, that things can turn around fairly quickly outside of your control, right? So, keep in mind, I never went to college for business. Like, it was all computers. I had a technical background. So there's definitely some hard lessons you learn running a business without kind of a business background. And that was one of them, is not understanding how volatile a source of income might be depending on the state of the economy, right? So
Yeah.
that was when we shifted, and I kind of, I always try to look at challenges as opportunities. Kind of another thing I was self-taught with, kind of that entrepreneurial spirit, right? That you gain, books you read, things like that. And so I went to our client base at the time, which I hadn't spent much time growing our IT client base, and said, hey, we're in a recession. You want to get rid of the peaks and valleys in your expenses. I want to get rid of the peaks and valleys in my income. Let's move to this fixed rate model, right? And it was as simple as taking like the last 3 years of a lot of our kind of more proactive clients, showing them what they've spent on an hourly model, coming up with a formula based on users' devices on what that looks on a fixed rate model. And then, it was an easy buy-in for them. So it basically gave them the sense of security that they have fixed expenses every month. And then, of course, I've got fixed income. So I know I'm going to be able to hopefully survive this, right?
Yep.
And that's when we got our first RMM, right? We didn't have an RMM until 2008. That was kind of another new thing for us. So I spent, after 2008, it was really a big focus on IT. My business partner handled the web development, I handled IT. So it was kind of a nice partnership there. Having a web development firm in-house, though, when I look back, it hindered my growth, in the sense that when you've got that entrepreneurial spirit and you've got a technical background, you tend to have this ego that comes along with it that makes you think, oh, I've got all the answers, right? I know how these clients need to be serviced and set up. And naturally, with a development team behind you, you're like, I can build my own tools. So we built our own ticketing system, PSA. We had our own password manager, documentation system. Like, we basically built everything, around this RMM that we had. And what happened is, that lasted about, I don't know, 2008, maybe about 6 years before I couldn't scale well, having my own homegrown tools. There's things that I wanted to add to them that my web development team couldn't keep up with the requests. Cash is king, right? So we get a cash project. Oh, we're going to work on this client's project instead of updating this internal software that isn't delivering cash, And so there's things like that I ran into, that I realized quickly that, I wasn't going to be able to scale like I wanted to. So it was like 2014, 15. I started looking around in the industry, and that was really when I feel like I got outside my box that I put myself in for so long. Part of the issue too is our market that we're in. We're in a very small area. It spans 100 miles with like our county, 9 cities that make up, maybe 250K, and a good 50 to 80K of those are like college students.
Okay.
So it's, our area is tourism, wine, ag, very rural. So it's a smaller market. And as an MSP, you almost feel like you're in this bubble. And so I finally popped that bubble and started looking to the MSP community and realizing, wow, our community is a lot different than most industries in the sense that it's not as competitive, where people are sharing ideas and there's tools made specifically for our market to help us succeed. And there's these things called channel only vendors that only sell to MSPs and that like really care about us, right? And whereas, in my bubble, I'm thinking, oh, there's Microsoft, there's all these big enterprise companies that don't really care about us. But no, there's this whole MSP community that I was missing out on. So that was where I saw a huge amount of growth. Really got turned on to the Autotask PSA. It was right when the dashboards had come out, and that was one of the major additions that I was trying to get my development team to add to our PSA. And it just, I looked at the monthly cost versus what I'm paying my development team, and it was a no-brainer. I'm like, shoot, I mean, why didn't I do this sooner, right? And so, adopted the PSA, quickly moved to the data RMM as well, because I saw a lot of the advantages there of the integrations, and it was just 10 times better than the previous RMM we had. And that was really when we started taking off, about 2016. So we grew just in 2 years, about 57% growth.
Wow.
And that was literally tool set change outs.
Okay.
Automating processes, efficiency. Part of the issue when I think of growing my MSP, there's kind of two major phases that I was happy to get through, and I'm still kind of working on one of them. One of them was getting rid of my stickiness with my clients, right, as the owner, and making my clients feel like they can depend on my team and that they don't have to always go to Brian, right? It's not always, hey, make sure you get Brian involved on this, right? So that it happens properly, or, we don't run into issues. So I was able to do that, right? But then then I realized I need to buffer myself. I buffered myself with my clients. I got my service delivery team in between me and my clients, right? Now I almost need to buffer myself between me and my service delivery team, because that still didn't stop my service delivery team from always reaching out to me, worried, hey, am I doing the right thing? Is this, how should I handle this? And so that's kind of where I feel like a lot of that efficiency came in, with a better, a much better PSA, and then RMM even. I was able to automate a lot of things and delegate tasks to other members on my team, and be able to give them more ownership in making decisions on their own without having to involve me as much. And then most recently, literally in the past 2 years, built out a leadership team. Right, which is ultimately my buffer between service delivery. So PSA RMM helped that a lot. We got to we were on track to do $1.8 million in 2018, which I think it was like 3 years before that we were just hitting the $1 million mark, right? So I was on this great track. My business partner and I decided to split in 2018. It was mainly, we were running two different businesses. He had web development, I had IT. Yeah, we did quarterly meetings. We kind of, strategized together, but ultimately he had a set of employees he was managing. I had a set of employees I was managing. And we had also started this SaaS company. I'm not going to go too much into it, but it's continuing education units. It was kind of part of our dream, part of this web development. So the SaaS company and web development were doing just as well as IT come 2018. And we're like, do we need to be partners anymore? Or can we just split? And it was kind of an easy split, because I took IT, he took those other two businesses, and then now I became sole owner, right? And so 2018 was a big year for me starting out, in the sense I was sole owner of my MSP now. I had this amazing MSP community to back me, which I also spent a lot of time sharing my story with. You get as much out of something as you put in, is always what I believe. And I just feel like, yeah, I'm going to grow. And then March of 2018, we got hit with our old RMM. We were about halfway migrating off of it onto data RMM, and our old RMM, basically they got in as one of the user accounts. infected half of our clients with ransomware, and it was a major turning point for us. It was another major challenge being a business owner, right? And so this was a wake-up call for me. It took about 2 weeks to remediate, 500K in total damages, 250K hard loss out of pocket. Insurance company ended up funding about 150K of that, all said and done. But it really changed the way I was thinking, in the sense that I truly stopped looking at other MSPs as competitors. I realized, you know, we're all allies kind of in this information war, which I'd love to talk about even more once I get done with this long-winded story. And then also that our clients are a shared risk. In the sense, and that's a shared risk either by, you know, caused by us, you know, not keeping our own house in order, which is kind of what happened with the RMM, or a client potentially not having their security up to par, and then causing an emergency for us one day and potentially a lawsuit or a falling out with a client, right? So I went 2 years not taking on any new clients, just hardening our own house, learning everything I could about security. I realized that if I was going to stay in this industry, we need to be a security first MSP. So I really spent a lot of time not only coming up with what I thought our solutions were going to be, but trying them out and realizing, you know, this isn't going to work. And I got wrapped around tools initially, thinking they were going to solve my issues, without realizing people and processes are just as important, if not more. So I've kind of, you know, re-evolved myself within this 2-year period of going these different routes with security, you know, some ways learning the hard way, spending a bunch of money on a security product that turns out we didn't need because we already had something else that worked fine. So I gained a lot of knowledge, and in that process developed an even closer relationship with a lot of vendors, Datto being one of them. Became friends with Ryan Weeks. He was instrumental in helping me kind of understand the path to follow, and even helped course correct me a couple times when I was going down the wrong path. So, you know, as I'm going through this kind of security evolution, I'm sharing everything I'm learning with the community. And with that comes trolling, of course. You know, I initially thought I wanted to be an MSSP. So that was my message, you know, for a while, before I realized that's quite a big hill to climb, coming from where we were at as an MSP, to think just like, oh, overnight we're going to become an MSSP, right?
Right.
And I quickly realized that it wasn't really in our wheelhouse, and that there's a community to reach out to for that. I can hire a 24/7 SOC instead of have to hire internal, you know, security professionals that are going to cost me an arm and a leg, right? And not even be using to their full potential. So, yeah, you know, we're to this point now where we've solidified our stack. Like, I feel like I just did it again last month. I'm like, all right, our stack's good to go. And I know 6 months from now, I'm going to be like, okay, I thought our stack was good to go 6 months ago, but it's good to go now, you know. And when I say stack, I mean, it's just the whole approach, tools, you know, technology, people, and processes, right? You know, what do you have? We're on this, as far as verticals that we're looking at, you know, co-managed is a big area for us that we're starting to market in now, as well as the government vertical. We see a lot of good potential there, and we're even looking at getting our level 3 CMMC certification, so that we can be better aligned in that vertical. And so I see a lot of potential for MSPs, you know, right now. It's hard for me to fathom starting an MSP from scratch right now, given everything I've been through, you know. And it was interesting because COVID came along, right? And that was 2020. This was after our 2 years of hiatus from like caring to grow, because we were just like getting our house and our clients' houses in order. And it's like, this is our year, 2020. And then boom, there's COVID. And I kind of, you know, I almost looked at it a little comical. I'm like, you know what? I've been through the 08 recession. I've been through a security breach. Most MSPs wouldn't even survive what we went through. oh, this is going to be a walk in the park, COVID, right? And obviously it wasn't a walk in the park, but comparatively to these other things I'd been through, I felt like we can handle this, right? We just got to strategize, be proactive, be nimble. And it was interesting because a lot of what we had worked the past 2 years towards, hardening security, coming up with a better service stack and delivery for our clients, really primed us for COVID, in the sense that, everyone's got to work from home. Well, what are all the security concerns around that? And we were right there with solutions that we had vetted and knew worked, and were able to adapt and help our clients, that were making it through. And then our clients that struggled, we were cognitive of that, and based on our service delivery model, it's based on user and device. So if they were at half operations, we temporarily lowered their costs to help them get through it, and haven't lost any clients due to COVID so far. It's not over, obviously, but yeah, it's there's ups and downs, right? In an MSP business, it's not all shiny recurring revenue that you just sit there and build month after month, and you're retiring in 5 years.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with it, because it's interesting when you hit the rewind button and take a look at your story. I've always been fascinated with your ability to consistently be able to create the evolution in the business, right? Like I often have been a big fan of Jeff Bezos, where he talks about a day one methodology at Amazon. And when you think about the day one methodology, he believes that every single day should be day one. So you're constantly looking to push innovation in what you're doing. And I think, just hearing your story and listening to where you started as to where you are now, there is a focus on innovation, right? It's always this moment where you're taking some time to reflect on, here's where I am today. And it's interesting where you hit on the point where you talked about the stack, that you could be completely happy today, but I guarantee when you look at that stack, to your point, in 6 months, you're not going to be happy with it, because it's how you're wired. And I think what's fascinating in your entire story is you're someone who was interested in tech, who's pivoted into a hyper successful leader in your business on how you're approaching the business. Because I think each one of these opportunities, from 08, 09 to COVID, you name it, you've sat there and said, okay, is this a challenge or opportunity? Which I've always said is critical to have the right mindset. The challenge mindset will go, okay, I lost, I can't get back up, versus going, no, we need to rethink this. Let's move away from traditional, right? Beyond tech, how do I become an evolutionary thinker in what I can offer and put out there for folks? And consistently, it's impacted your business, right? Yeah. Even through some big aha moments where you talked about the ransomware, right? That, and I've always been a believer in old technology is good until old technology lets you know it's no longer good, right? These are the things that we build in-house. We take a look at the cost of ownership. We take a look at some dated pieces of technology that are doing a lot of things okay, but they do a couple things not really well. And then all of a sudden we're impacted, our clients are impacted. You, again, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I've got this great hurdle, I don't know how we're going to solve it, mindset was, here's a challenge, here's an opportunity, right? How do I overcome this? How do we get better? How do I learn and grow from it? I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think it also goes back to your point earlier, where when you are trying to transform yourself into being someone who knows how to work in the tech space, to being a tech leader, you also have to have a certain level of vulnerability where you can go out to the network and go, guys, I don't know about this topic. Help me get here. Because I've always been a believer that we don't run into new problems. They're just new problems for ourselves, right? This is the moment where I used to always love, when my grandfather was still here, he'd tell great stories because he was the storyteller that was talking about solving problems, right? And so that wisdom comes from other people's journeys. So I'd love to learn more about, you talked a little bit about leaning into the network and starting to build some relationships. Share a little bit of that with us.
Yeah. So it was an interesting transition because, as a business owner, you're always limited with time. And I would say one of my biggest struggles I have, especially beginning of a new week, right? It's like, all right, what am I going to do this week? And when you get to the maturity level we're at, we've got 13 employees. We manage about 60 clients across 2,500 devices. And I've got this leadership team. We're leadership heavy, actually. We've got 4 people, not including me, on the leadership team, right? So when you think of ratio of leadership team to service delivery, we're a little on the heavy side, and that was on purpose for scaling reasons, right? I want to be able to be less involved in the day-to-day business so that I can focus more on growing the business and focusing on its future. So one of the hardest things is always like, what am I going to spend my time on this week that's not repetitive, something that I should have delegated to someone else to do, that's actually going to help the business succeed. And in the beginning, when I was first getting introduced to the community, it's a fairly big time suck to go to these events. You're away from your business. In the earlier days when I didn't have this leadership team built out, a lot of times I'm working remotely, at these events, which I see a lot of MSPs doing all the time, which makes sense, right? Because you can't just like leave your business to go get involved with the community.
Yep.
And then webinars, even before COVID, we're always like a time taxing, like, do I watch this webinar? Do I not? Am I going to get any value out of it? But what I found is, and I even got pushback from some of my peer groups, like, hey, you're spending a lot of time, going to these events and speaking, and, what are you getting out of that, right? They're telling, I look at my peer groups as kind of a board of directors for me,
Yep.
right? To help me steer my company as a CEO. And so even getting questioned, like, are you spending your time in the right place? And I just kept telling myself, you know what, I need to do this. I need to do this. I almost look at it as training for me as a business owner, to learn what's happening in the community, what my vendors are doing, what they're being told by other MSPs or their struggles. And I found, now I probably spend at least 10 hours a week with some sort of community involvement, whether it's on a talk like this, or learning about a new product, or on a MSP panel where I'm sharing, what I've learned. And I always learn, even when I'm sharing, I learn things, even from you today, I'll learn things you've shared. And so it turned into this kind of like, felt wrong at first because I should be spending more time on my business, to, as I did it more and more, feeling right, feeling like this was the right choice. That there's also this part of me too that, I didn't get involved in this line of business because it's a thank you business. Like, people aren't happy to call you up on the phone and be like, oh, I'm so happy you're my MSP, and I'm so happy I got the chance to call you today. It's something's broken, or we need to spend a lot of money and we don't really want to spend it on this project, it's getting easier now with the work from home push and the understanding that IT is a necessity, right? We're an essential business now.
Absolutely.
Businesses are realizing, okay, I need to invest in my tech, but early days, it's fighting them to invest in tech, right? And so I in my early days, I was an actor, I was a DJ for 8 years. I was part of several nonprofits, ran one for 4 years, we're an education nonprofit, all volunteer board. And what I get out of that type of work is the thank you business. That's, people are happy to see you. When I was DJing or acting or whatever, it was like entertainment, right?
Yeah.
When I was doing nonprofit work, it was like, thank you for your service, right? Like, people are happy to see you. And so what I really did is I took all of those kind of hobbies or things I did on the side, nonprofits, the local community give back that I spent a lot of time on, which helped grow my business as well. And now I pour all that time into the MSP community. And it gives me that feeling that I'm giving back. And it's also the thank you business that I like being in, where my vendors are happy to talk to me. Not that clients aren't happy to talk to us, but just the general consensus is, hey, I've got a problem, I got to call Itech, right?
Yeah.
So the short answer to your question about the community involvement, it was definitely something at first that I was questioning if I'm spending too much time in. people around me questioned it, but it's given back to my business and my team tremendously. And now I'm on several partner advisory boards. I've got relationships with our vendors. Datto is probably one of the best relationships, but other vendors too, like Pax8, for example, where I'm getting, information to help grow my business and give back to my team to make them feel like we are a leader in the industry. Because that's really what I realized that I need to be as a thought leader, right? Not for my team, for my family, for my clients. And if I'm going to be that thought leader, why not give it back to the MSP community and share what I've learned to hopefully help other people succeed, right?
Absolutely. And I think the big piece that I want anyone who's paying attention today to this session is taking a look at your ability to understand where you get reward and value, right? There's the one piece of being a CEO, but then also saying, well, what are these other things that fire these aha dendrite moments in your brain going, I want to hear a thank you, but I want to hear a thank you because I want to give, right?
Yeah.
The thank you is the end result. In your soul, it's going, no, I want to be out there and helping some people solve some problems. And from my perspective, I want to be very purposeful in sharing how much you have a willingness to lean in and to do two things. Number one, you have a willingness to ask the question. And then number two, you're there to offer feedback, right? For those that are asking other questions, that are taking that first step out of going, okay, I'm kind of running a little bit of a lifestyle business. They won't call it a lifestyle business, but it's a lifestyle business, right? And they're trying to figure some things out. They're hitting a moment where all of a sudden somebody's going, I think I need to hire an employee, right? Somebody just asked me now, when can I be available? And oh, by the way, now I want to hand over the responsibility of me being front man to the company to someone else so I can grow the company, right? But still being able to be all these things, but singularly focused in the growth of your business. Because I think what's been great for you and your growth now is everyone begins to pay attention to that, because your employees understand where you're trying to take the business. Because we all know the minute we become stagnant and think that you're playing a finite game in the tech space, you're dead. You are absolutely dead. There's this great book that was put out by Simon Sinek that he talks about an infinite game. Yep. And this infinite game is as loud as it ever has been in the tech space, because we are evolving so unbelievably quick based on forces outside of our world, right? We take a look at ransomware. We take a look at where globally other countries are coming after other countries, right? Looking for information. And we're forced to live in this world where we've got to move quickly. We've got to solve problems. And I think that that's the piece where I take, again, look at your story and more importantly, your strategy in the business of why you're winning and why you're successful. So, on our end, we love to get to collaborate with you because you're frontline, right? You're frontline, you're a visionary, and you hit the proverbial nail on the head. You talked about being a thought leader in the space because you're consistently having a focus on becoming a reflective practitioner. Your stack today will be completely different from what it needs to be in 6 months. You said it, you believe it, and you're strategizing to make sure you can do that. I got two fun questions for you today. You mentioned at the beginning, you're a gamer. So let's take a look. Brian, you got one game console you can pick. What's the console you pick and what's the game you play?
Well, I'm a Halo fanatic. Okay. So definitely Xbox and Halo. And I was really disappointed the new Halo didn't come out last winter like it was supposed to. At heart, growing up, keyboard mouse guy, right, on the computer. Yep. But what happened was, you're in front of a keyboard mouse, computer all day long. And if you do want a game in the evening, right, which I usually get about a half hour, maybe an hour in, the last thing I want to be is sitting at my desk that I've been at all day, right? So it's like, go out to the couch, relax, sit back, got a controller. So there are some games we do a game night with our team every other Friday. So, every 2 weeks we're gaming as a team. And that's when I'll sit down in front of a computer. And one of the newer games I've been playing that I really like is called Valorant, which is kind of a new revision of Counter-Strike, CSGO. It's kind of the newer updated version of that. Okay. Definitely first-person shooters. mainly because I have such limited time to game. I want to just get into the action right away, but I've been known to play SimCity back in the day, those kind of longer games that take more time. But now with my family business and everything, I got to just balance it out better, so.
Awesome answer. Awesome answer. And then one last question for you. If you were to give your younger self some advice, the young Brian Weiss who's sitting there working in the break fix, thinking about going from mom and pa's and residential fixes and wanting to go into the business that you're in today, what would be that one moment of advice you'd share with that younger version of yourself?
Drop the ego and realize there's people out there smarter than you that can help you obtain your goals quicker. I mean, if I was going to start an MSP today, first of all, I kind of, shiver at that idea just because of everything I've been through. But if I could, maintain all this knowledge and start a brand new MSP, I would be hiring people smarter than me. I wouldn't be trying to do everything myself, thinking I can do everything myself. And I'd probably even look at an acquisition rather than trying to build something from the ground up. Just because there are those growing pains that you deal with as an MSP, depending on what your size is, you're wearing so many hats, right? And I feel lucky to be at the maturity level I'm at now, where I'm wearing a lot less hats and I can actually focus on growing the business. And you don't have that luxury starting an MSP from the ground up. You are really wearing a ton of hats, it's, to me, it's interesting because when we think about our clients, and helping them grow their business, like we've been put through the ringer as MSP business owners. I mean, we've had to grow our own business. And so we've got a lot of, we have skills we've developed and things we've learned that we can share with our clients that really have nothing to do with IT, just in the sense of growing a small business, and so I think that definitely my ego is what held me back, thinking, hey, I had all the answers. I could build all my own tools. I'd probably be 5 to 10 years ahead of myself right now if I didn't let that hinder me in the early days.
Awesome feedback. I think at the end of the day, the biggest things that jump out from me from our time today, people, process, technology, humility, really jumps off the screen. This is awesome. Brian, thanks so much for carving some time out with us today at MSP Insights. And thanks so much for choosing data.
All right. Thank you.